Dobry wieczór, proszę Państwa. Cieszę się bardzo, że spotykamy się w tak licznym gronie na wykładzie pod intrygującym tytułem „Ile jest warte dziedzictwo? Ile warte jest dziedzictwo?” Wykładzie, który przedstawi nam za chwilę pan profesor Gregory Ashworth, którego szczególnie gorąco chciałem powitać. Proszę Państwa, nim krótko przedstawię sylwetkę naszego gościa, chciałem powiedzieć, że to nasze dzisiejsze spotkanie ma podwójny wymiar i podwójny sens. Z jednej strony to jest inauguracja 9. już edycji Akademii Dziedzictwa, podyplomowych studiów, które od kilkunastu lat prowadzimy wspólnie z Małopolską Szkołą Administracji Publicznej, z Uniwersytetem Ekonomicznym w Krakowie i który to program jest wspierany finansowo przez naszego mecenasa, Fundację imienia Leopolda Cronenberga z Warszawy, Fundację Citibanku. I dlatego cieszę się, że są dzisiaj na sali studenci rozpoczynający ten program, których szczególnie gorąco witam, ale też cieszę się, że są też uczestnicy i studenci naszych wcześniejszych programów. Są wykładowcy i jest dyrektor naszej partnerskiej szkoły, pan doktor Kopyciński. Ale równocześnie to spotkanie jest finałem naszego 2,5-dniowego spotkania ekspertów, którzy tu w naszym centrum przez ponad 2 dni spotykali się w związku z programem badawczym pod tytułem Culture Heritage Counts for Europe. Programem, którego liderem jest Europa Nostra, paneuropejska organizacja, rodzaj federacji organizacji pozarządowych, które w Europie, w całej Europie zajmują się problematyką dziedzictwa i z którą, a także wspólnie z Uniwersytetem w Leuven nasze centrum prowadzi program badawczy, o którym na pewno jeszcze się Państwo będą mogli wiele dowiedzieć. Tyle tytułem krótkiego wprowadzenia i wstępu, natomiast teraz mam przyjemność przedstawić Państwu pana profesora Ashwortha, którego niektórzy z Państwa tu obecni na sali już dobrze znają, dlatego że Gregory Ashworth jest klasykiem gatunku. I understand, Greg, that you are understanding what I am saying now. You are the classic of... Jest światowej klasy badaczem, który zajmuje się zagadnieniami, które nas dzisiaj tutaj wszystkich połączyły. Zarządzanie dziedzictwem kulturowym, kwestia turystyki miejskiej, planowanie przestrzenne, marketing miejski, przemysły czasu wolnego. Profesor Ashworth jest z wykształcenia geografem. Urodził się w Glasgow, a więc ja rozumiem, że z natury jest Szkotem, ale studiował w Londynie. Karierę rozpoczynał w Walii, w Portsmouth, ale już nie dojechał do Irlandii Północnej, żeby był komplet. Wybrał Groningen i jest od wielu, wielu lat związany z tym znanym holenderskim uniwersytetem, na którym wykłada i gdzie popełnia swoje kolejne ważne teksty. Ja tylko przypomnę, że wśród bardzo długiej listy książek, które czytamy, również tu w Krakowie, profesor Ashworth jest autorem Heritage Planning, Building a New Heritage, Tourism, Culture and Identity in the New Europe, Dissonant Heritage, Geography of Heritage, I wreszcie ostatnia książka, Senses of Time, Senses of Place. Nie jest tajemnicą, że nasze centrum przygotowuje pierwsze polskie wydanie wybranych tekstów pana profesora i mam nadzieję, że studenci rozpoczynający dzisiaj ten kurs będą mogli za rok cieszyć się polskim wydaniem dzieł profesora Ashwortha. A teraz chciałbym zaprosić naszego gościa, żeby w dobrym czasie, w ciągu 45 minut rozprawił się z odpowiedzią na pytanie, ile jest warte dziedzictwo. Greg, the floor is yours. Are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
Because we agreed that I will mention that we do cooperate since 25 years time.
Okay.
To jeszcze mam przypomnieć, że znamy się od 25 lat i pan profesor tutaj wielokrotnie już był również jako wykładowca naszej szkoły letniej i różnych innych programów, a poznaliśmy się 25 lat temu na początku tej nowej ery, w momencie, kiedy Europa się jednoczyła. Point.
Okay. Thank you. I've really got very little idea what Professor Perkler was saying about me. I think he was saying I'm some sort of old monument that should be carefully preserved, maybe in need of a bit of renovation. Ah, right, I'm heritage now. Right, okay. Well, actually, the truth of the matter is, I know that a lot of you have been working the last couple of days on this important European project, and you've done your work, and your reward is me. I'm the sort of light entertainment you get as a result of 2 days' hard work. View me as the sort of cabaret, I think. That's me. And the topic I was given is the topic that you have. What is heritage worth? And that's a question I've heard posed quite a lot in the last couple of days. I haven't heard it answered, because immediately you pose it, you start posing a whole series of other questions. Worth to whom? Worth how do you measure it? Worth, etc., etc., etc. So we'll pursue, perhaps, if we can, some of those topics. First, I think it's always a good idea to get clear at the beginning what we are actually talking about, particularly maybe in this field of heritage. Awful lot of people in heritage, I know that. Someone said the other day, it's a massive industry full of professionals working away in heritage. It is. But unfortunately, what it's full of is doers, people doing things in governments, in tourism, in private enterprise, in whatever. What it doesn't have is thinkers. The number of thinkers working in heritage, I can count on one hand, maybe two hands, in the world. Result of that, of course, is we use words in a very loose way. I don't. I've been fairly precise over the last 20, 30 years. So I need to know what exactly we're talking about. Otherwise, we cannot converse, obviously. And then this idea of heritage and economic profit, selling it for some purpose. We often think in terms of a happy symbiosis, that these two go quite happily together. That's a nice state of affairs. We don't want to think too much about that because we're just happy that it is. Look at that briefly, and then get to the core of the matter, really. What's the problem here? And there are a number of problems here. The largest is, in fact, the multiple roles of heritage. And we'll come into that one. And then finally, are there any lessons at all from anything that I say or anything that people have done over the last 20 or 30 years that are worth drawing? That maybe is the big one. Have we got microphone problems?
Yeah. Okay, yep, as you wish. No problem to me. What are we talking about? May seem a silly question. You may think you know everything you need to know about heritage. Careful, careful, careful. Because if you're thinking that heritage is about nice, pretty, old, historic buildings, the good old days of this and that, it's a nice, cultural, warm feeling, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to flip you over. It's exactly the opposite of that, in fact. Heritage is not old buildings or bits of history. It has actually very little to do with either. Heritage is a process. It's an outcome. It's an experience. That's what it is. Now, if you can get that clear, took me about 25 years to work that one out, but if you can get that clear in the next 10 seconds, the rest will make some sort of sense, I think. I hope. You see, the opposite is what we were stuck in for the best part of 100 years, really, and that's the preservation paradigm. Yeah, it goes from Ruskin, Morris, yeah, Leduc, etc., all the old guys. And quite a lot of people still in heritage, a lot of those professionals I was talking about a minute ago, in the museums, in the care of monuments, in government departments, in culture of one sort or another, are still in a preservation paradigm. And if they are, then they really believe that the past was real. I'm in heritage. I don't. Yeah, whoa. They believe, if you're a preservationist, that there is some sort of imperative here to preserve pasts. Whereas, of course, I know you can't preserve pasts at all because pasts aren't here. They are gone. Whoops, they're gone. How can I preserve what does not exist? I'd need to be quite a magician to do that. So we're not in the business of preserving anything. Ruskin believed that. I certainly don't. I'm very much rooted in the present, not the past. The past can go hang as far as I'm concerned. I'm in the present. We'll come back to that perhaps. And then we bring in the future. Yeah. Well, many of you are intent on leaving some sort of bequest and regard that as your purpose and function. I wouldn't count on futures actually thanking you for that. Well, if you're a preservationist, you believe in it. These are quite dogmatic, fundamentalist, absolutist ideas, and they brook no argument, generally. They're not mine. I'm in heritage, which is completely phenomenological. Sorry, that's a long word. I mustn't use long words. I'm in heritage. That's different. Different, I think, in the way we look at time. I would view time like this. The present is my reality. The present I know. The present I can sense, experience, research. But what about the past? Well, the past is gone, but I can imagine it from the present. So, past I am creating from the present through my creative imagination. And you're doing exactly the same. Historians won't admit it, but they are actually doing exactly the same as well, creating imagined pasts. And that's, in a sense, half the business we're in. The other half, of course, is the future. And the future, I'm sure you will accept, is also imagined from now. And if anything is certain whatsoever, it's that we'll get it wrong. We've always got it wrong. Presents have always got futures wrong, and we're not going to make an exception now. But nevertheless, we will try. But our only reality in heritage is the present. It's a contemporary study, in other words. Right. Highly selective, of course. Come back to that one. Highly selective. I think of time in that sort of way. Archaeologists don't, historians on the whole don't, but heritage people do. And if you can get clear on that one, if you can accept this, that it's heritage is about contemporary decisions, decisions we make now for our own needs now, from imagined pasts, for a bequest maybe to an imagined future. That's the business we're actually in. Sometimes I just use pictures because I like them, actually. Although there is a relationship to heritage, we think about it. How do we create it? Well, we have the past, whatever happened to happen, and it's an enormous heap of things. But our channels and ways into that from the present into a past, well, there's history, and we all know how unreliable and selective that is. It's accounts of the past written in the present, and constantly, of course, rewritten as presents change. We all know that. The old ruins and bits and pieces and pots and pans and, yeah, that litter the earth that we have left over from the past, the ruins, the physical survivals. Again, of course, all highly, highly selective. Some things survive, some do not. And that most unreliable of all, memory. Yeah, what we remember, yes. Or possibly more important, if you still believe in that nonsense about collective memory, that which other people have told you you ought to remember, which would be my definition of collective memory, but okay. Increasingly unreliable. And all of these, of course, are highly, highly selected. Fortunately, otherwise we would go mad. We would be buried under a heap of the past. That's the creation process, if you like, heritageization process. I think it's relatively well known. Right. Why do we do it? Why do presents need pasts? Well, there's 101 answers to that. We can just go on doing it as long as we want to, as long as we have patience to do it. But clearly we are doing it as an instrument for satisfying contemporary needs. Now what those needs may be, and we started off with the economic, yes, perfectly valid, but of course that doesn't deny there are plenty of other needs, of course, which political, social, and all the rest of it. Probably the most important is the political, but we could argue that if we wanted to. Yeah, these are not just collective, they're also highly individualistic, and we often forget the individual within the collectivity. Now, so we have heritage on the one side, and we have development, doing something. Now, if you're still stuck in a preservation paradigm, and I'm reasonably sure about 50% of you are, but we'll find out shortly, those two are diametric opposites. If you really believe in preservation, you cannot have development. The two are contradictory propositions. One means to protect from change, the other means to change in some desired direction. You cannot do both of those. So we could give up thinking in terms of heritage and development if you're a preservationist. Fortunately, I'm not. I'm in heritage. And these are not contradictory in any sense. Heritage is, defined it a minute ago, contemporary uses of the past. It is, therefore, a development option. It's not compulsory, but it is a development option. So not only do these ideas not contradict each other, they're actually the same. Heritage is a form of development. It's one option. So logically, philosophically, I have no problem whatsoever with that. It's very straightforward to me. If you want to see the difference between these two major paradigms, and there are of course others, but these are the two main ones that make conversations within the heritage field almost impossible sometimes. We talk across each other because we hold different paradigms. And these are reflected in objectives, of course. They are quite different depending on the paradigm. How we view the resources that we use in order to create our imagined pasts for our contemporary goals. Preservationists believe there's something fixed about it. But if you're in heritage, and this is why it's a happy symbiosis, resources are in fact infinite. The only boundary we have is the boundary of the human imagination, because that's what's creating the resources. They're also ubiquitous. They exist everywhere. There is not more heritage in Krakow than in Poznan or Katowice, because in practice you can create heritage anywhere you want. Of course, it's ubiquitous and infinite. The selection criteria are completely extrinsic. We ascribe values. All our values are ascribed values in heritage. So a church, a monument, an event has no intrinsic value in heritage at all. We create the value when we need to do it. It comes from us at this moment. And of course it changes, in which case. What we can value now, we may not value in 10 years' time. What we do not value now, we may value in 10 years' time, and so on. And of course, who does it? Heritage is not expert-driven. It's user-driven. The users create heritage. You create your own heritage as you're using it. You are the determinant of it, and indeed the authenticator of it. Ooh. So all this makes it a highly flexible instrument, of course, hence my happy symbiosis. We don't have to discover resources, we create them, and we create them as and when we need them. Case after case after case, whether it's Carcassonne or it's the old square in central Warsaw or it's Disneyland. They are all created heritage resources, obviously so, as we need it. And these resources, I repeat again, are everywhere, infinite and inexhaustible. You want more Venices, I can give you more Venices. No big deal. All right, so it's all very happy. Sounds good. Bit too good to be true, maybe. And we're not hung up on this stuff. Preservationists are. Heritage people don't care a damn about authenticity, to be honest. Or they have a different definition of it, a different way of validating. We don't have expert validation. We have user validation. The only authenticity that matters in heritage is the authenticity of the experience, not the authenticity of the objects. That has lots and lots of implications. Thinking about it. Yeah. Of course not. Of course not. I just throw these sort of cases around because I'm used to dealing with students. That's my favorite Venice, of course. Venice without the Italians, yeah. Yeah, Las Vegas. It's authentic. If you want it to be authentic, depends on the nature of the experience. Where I live in the northern Netherlands, we have this marvelous 17th century Star Fort. It was created in 1970. Has that now spoiled your enjoyment of it? They built it in 1970. It's called Butanga. But it's perfect. The experience is fine. Or indeed, if you really want to confuse yourself, why not go to London Bridge? London Bridge, Nevada, where we sold it to the Americans, and they were fool enough to pay good dollars for it, and they re-erected in Lake Havasu Park in Nevada. So tell me about your authenticity now then. If you're a preservationist, you've got problems. If you're in heritage, none whatsoever. The only authenticity is the authenticity of the experience. Yeah, and I put this one in just for you, Jacek. We're in Galicia, of course. If nobody claims it, if nobody wants it, it's not heritage. 2 million men died in May 1915, almost 100 years ago, in the Görlitz-Tarnów offensive of the Austro-Hungarians. 2 million. They're buried in Galicia. Professor Perkler showed me the sites. And here are the cemeteries rotting away because they are not claimed by anybody. They are nobody's heritage. Therefore, they're not heritage. We can discard as easily as we claim, would be my point. Yeah. And any sort of heritage development is therefore optional. It's not a compulsory option. You don't have to do it. Even in Krakow, you don't have to do it. So, we're all very happy, really. We can have heritage wherever, however, whenever we wish to create it. It may be more difficult in some circumstances than others, but nothing is ruled out. So, what's the problem then? I painted you a really happy field in which there aren't any problems. Yeah, but there are, I'm afraid. And they stem from basically the intrinsic nature of heritage. See, most of the resources we're dealing with were, of course, not created for economic purposes. They were created for religious purposes, social purposes, political purposes, defense purposes, or whatever. And we wish now to use them for a different purpose. Yeah, difficulties. Many, many, many of that vast army of professionals out there working in some aspect of this enormous, varied, diverse field of heritage really are not interested in the economic aspects of it at all. Some are downright hostile. They regard it as nasty commercialization of beautiful cultural objects. Others merely accept it as a grudging evil they have to put up with. Yeah, we've got to have visitors to our museums. We've got to have a few tourists to our wonderful churches. We'd rather we didn't, but we have to. But it's certainly not high on their list of priorities. So we do have a problem. We have a problem. Those looking after the resources and those trying to make money from the resources have quite different views. quite different objectives. And most of the agencies that are dealing with it, many of the agencies that you represent, really don't have economic goals high on their agendas. They didn't have them on their agendas at all 10 years ago, and now they've been forced to put them in. They put them in right at the bottom as a sort of afterthought. You know, objective number 37. Oh, we might make some money out of tourism as well. We may. Equally, the problem that we assume, I think, most of those in this business, certainly if you're happy with the happy symbiosis model, that what we have here is a windfall gain model. And that basically, the argument would run just like this. We have heritage, totally non-economic reasons. Museums would not shut if no tourist ever turned up. We wouldn't demolish Krakow if no one ever visited it. So total and non-economic reasons, it exists. And it costs money. Quite a lot of money, actually. So the argument runs, let's attract a marginal economic gain. And then in economic terms, we make a marginal gain at zero cost. Windfall gain model. Yeah. Many people in the heritage industry think like that. It only works, actually, if you can fulfill a number of criteria. Is it the same heritage? Is your marginal use the same heritage as your existing use? Same reasons? Is there the capacity there to do it? If there isn't the capacity there to do it, how are you going to manage it? How are you going to prioritize users? And of course, every tourist city, including Krakow, has this sort of problem. It can be done, but it presents you with a management problem straight away. We cannot assume a nice, happy, easy windfall gain model. It rarely occurs, actually, like that. Ooh, still problems. That's not a problem. That's a good thing. Heritage earns money. We've begun to talk in the last couple of days. I was listening about the economics of heritage, and the economics of heritage depends upon two simple statements. And this is the first. Heritage earns money. Yeah, it does. I don't have to argue that. It earns quite a lot of money, not just in tourism, incidentally. Tourism isn't the biggest economic use of heritage, or others. But it earns it directly and indirectly. We can even produce, people were throwing sums, money, figures around the other day, and they were all in the billions. So many billions of dollars earned, and so many billions earned from this and that. Yeah. I don't dispute that such sort of figures exist. Heritage earns money. It does, but to most of the users of heritage, it's a zero-cost public good. And that goes for most of the commercial users of heritage. Certainly the tourism industry. Tourism industry loves heritage because to them, from their position, it's a zero-cost resource. They pay next to nothing for it. But actually, and here's the second statement that makes up the economics of heritage, it costs money. Yeah. Well, of course. Actually, the biggest cost, in my view, if you're looking at the economic costs of heritage, is not necessarily maintenance costs and so on, though those are high. And of course, infinite. It extends to infinity. It's not a one-off cost. But the real cost, in economic terms, is what the economists would call opportunity cost. What you could otherwise be doing with the resources which we now devote to heritage. Above all, I suppose, in cities, the resources of sheer space. Yes, you can keep a church, or you can knock it down and build a supermarket. Now, I know how much that supermarket would be worth. I can count that out. That's the opportunity cost. So we're racking up quite high costs. And that, if you like, is the economic problem of heritage. We have costs and we have benefits. Sounds a nice balance. But the core problem is that the costs and the benefits do not accrue to the same people. Those reaping the benefits are not necessarily the same people as those paying the costs. So what we have is a classic economic problem. Environmental economics knows all about this sort of thing. We have an externality problem, basically. And unless you can find... Actually, the economics of heritage is dead simple. Solve the problem of externalities and you've solved it. Internalize the externalities. Easy to say. But think about how the hell you would go around doing it. But until you do that, it's quite pointless to talk about an economics of heritage, because that's the core of it. Yeah. Right. Oh, I still have problems. I do, actually. I'm going to remind you that heritage is as much individual as collective, and yet everything that's been said in the last couple of days has been completely collective. We think of heritage fulfilling collective goals of one sort or another, whether they're economic or they're non-economic. Actually, far more important than that is individual goals. Each single individual, one of you, has created your own heritage. It's yours. And you've created it in just the same way through memory, relics, histories, things you were told. And that creates you, your heritage, your identity. Totally unique to you and completely uninteresting to me. Interesting thought, that. And that has some implications, actually. Of course, memory is. And that's your problem. Once you get into the market again, you can't sell your heritage to anybody. There's a trick here, and I know how to do it, but in fact, you can't sell your heritage to anybody else. What you have to do is to sell them their heritage in your place. If you could do that, you're home and dry. So forget about selling your heritage. It's of no interest to anyone except you. Here's another problem. Accept two propositions. Every place on God's earth has a past. Krakow doesn't have a longer past than anyone else. Every people has a culture of some sort or other. The problem with that, of course, is you can create this heritage then anywhere. It's a universal option. And anything that can be done anywhere by anyone, any economist will tell you, is going to be a pretty fiercely competitive field. So if you think you could do it, you're going to have very good arguments why you're going to do it better than anybody else. Another problem, oh, I'm full of problems. Almost all heritage, in fact I have argued all heritage in the past, is potentially dissonant. In other words, not nice, not harmonious. Every heritage, each bit, is likely to be dissonant to somebody in some way at some time. Which isn't all that surprising, actually, because we're dealing with pasts. And remember, you don't need me to tell you, pasts were awful for most people most of the time. Most of our past, almost all of it, was awful. Yeah. And that's what we're playing with and dealing with here. Therefore, heritage is just as likely to provoke negative emotions, alienation of one sort or another, just feelings of uncomfortableness or straight rejection and conflict, of course. And I spent a lot of my life working in these sort of dissonant fields. It can be managed, but you have to know that this is the consequence of going into heritage. All heritage disinherits. We are in the disinheritance business. Right? Of course. Did I not say it is selective? If we are selecting something, we are not selecting something else. Logical? Yeah. So we're disinheriting. Every time we create a monument, every time we put a plaque on a wall, we're disinheriting someone, somehow, somewhere. Yes, okay, I'm not saying don't do it, but be aware of what you're doing. Almost all of this relates ultimately, I checked, okay, relates ultimately to this problem of the multiple roles of heritage. Yeah, I love that statue. I think it's the largest statue in the world. Yes, those are people. Yes, there's a person there. I've never met a bigger statue than that. That's a challenge to you. Tell me a bigger statue than the statue that crowns Mamayev Hill above Stalingrad. Heroes of the Soviet Union. What a statue. Anyway, all irrelevant. I put up some roles of heritage. Only some. You could put up 20 more. Heritage is used for all these important purposes. whether they're social, whether they're political, legitimation of ideologies, yeah. Social inclusion, very important these days by many, many Western governments, identity, whether it's collective or individual, making money, yeah, of course, proving we are different as people and as places, yeah, all of these. And it can do all of these, but all at the same time, with the same heritage? No way. No way. You can't have it all in one go. You've got to make choices again as to what the objectives are here and have a very clear idea what you are rejecting. Yeah, I don't really need to tell you things like that. You know that. You have a direct instrumental role there. Tourism in this city, I watched this city develop tourism over the last 20, 30 years, and it has changed completely, hasn't it? I'm enough of a conservative to say I don't think altogether for the good. But all right, that's a personal view. But certainly, we do it in all sorts of different ways. But most of my professional life has been involved in this sort of thing. Managing cities, urban regeneration projects. The oldest was Norwich, of course, in my book, 1959. But here we got historicity being deliberately used as a catalyst for regeneration, economic regeneration, social revitalization, both, and physical reconstruction. And we've done it in city after city. So the question now is, it's not find places where it's been done, but find places where it hasn't been done. We've done 30, 40 years of this now, of course. We use it as an environmental amenity, to improve the environmental amenity, which acts in turn as a location factor for lots of things. It's enhancement in that sense of our daily lives. We use it to identify places. How do we know where we are? We know where we are because of heritage. Of course we do. If I look at that one, I say, oh, yeah, I must be in Barcelona. Of course I know that. It's Gaudi, has to be. And so the link has been made. If I'm up here and I look, oh, yeah, that must be Hundertwasser. I must be in Vienna. And then I'm traveling on the London Underground, and I get to a station and I get off. Which station am I at, you know? I know immediately because, oh, yeah, look. Baker Street, yeah. Linked with Sherlock Holmes, of course. Didn't even exist, but that didn't matter. It's still used as a place identifier in that sense. Yeah, I work a lot of the time in this sort of thing, in place imaging, place branding. And the number of times we actually used the past to brand the future in places is a bit of a mystery to me why we do it, but we do. More than half the cases that I tend to come across, it's the past that's been used in order to brand futures. It's weird, but we do it. Something to do with identity, I guess. Finally, are there any lessons? Well, the normal practice is to look at the success stories. I really don't think you should do that. I could give you many, many success stories, of course. Yeah, whichever ones you want. I worked in British Columbia as tremendous success of a place like Oberammergau. Stratford, Ontario, changed itself completely around by identifying with Shakespeare. Amazing. And thousands more are trying it now. However, my feeling is, if I look at those sort of success stories, that there are no lessons whatsoever. No general lessons can ever be drawn. I'm really not in favor of what they call best practice exchange. I know planners do it all the time. If someone wants to go down this line of thinking and say, must do something about our place, what's the first thing they do is let us think of somewhere that has done it successfully, go and visit them and copy it. That's almost a recipe for failure, actually. There is no universal model. There's no automatic windfall gain here. And if you look at the successes, can you actually create rules and say, these are the conditions you need for it to be successful? Not in general sense, you can't. And actually, I'd be more in favor of worst practice exchange than best practice exchange. But you don't go to conferences where planners or mayors of cities put up their hand and say, yes, we tried this, we failed abysmally. But you might actually learn more from that than from the people saying, oh, we were very successful. You just don't hear it. I think I can say that heritage alone, working independently by itself, very rarely works. It has to be embedded in various ways, in a much wider framework, both administratively, but also in terms of objectives, strategic planning, marketing, and a whole management structure, of course. You can't just have, oh, let's have a bit of heritage and then everything will be all right. No, embed it in a much, much wider development strategy, which will have many, many other strands apart from heritage. And avoid, if you can, the trap of imitation. Because, of course, what you're trying to do is stress your uniqueness. You're using heritage because you think your past is unique or can be made unique. If we can push that, therefore, unique heritage equals unique place. We have created a uniqueness for ourselves. We become unique. But actually doing it, the practice in the field of actually heritageization, is pure risk investment, however you look at it. Lots of people, whether they're the money men, and this costs money, property developers, the world financial corporations that finance this sort of thing, but also the local planners, but also the artists and creative architects and designers. You'd think these would be all going for the unique. No, they tend to avoid risk, as we all do. They repeat what has already been successful elsewhere. So the result of the process tends to be we produce a sort of generic cliched heritage, ultimately. There's a contradiction in that. It's a trap. Don't do it. Avoid it if you can. And I think all the success stories I rapidly ran through there at least had one thing in common. They were all the first. You try to do the same thing anywhere else now, it won't work, because you won't be the first. Maybe something in that. Trap of localism. Yeah, we're playing with the local and the global here, of course. You want locality, but actually the heritage as an activity is highly global. It results in what I would call a sort of catalogue heritage. And yes, you kind of buy all these things off the peg. There are catalogues of them. You want a medieval street scene, you buy it by the square meter. And yes, many places go down that line. And you really run out of all ideas and probably all money. What's the last thing you do? Oh, at least there's something we can do. We can hang up flower baskets. Yeah. When I see that in the city, I know they've reached the bottom of the barrel, actually. Yeah. Absolutely. Problem for a geographer then. So, do you now know where you're going? I would hope so. It may be that you're curious to know a little more. If you do, there are many, many books around. Most of them written by me, I know that. Or indeed, you can contact me at the University of Groningen, Rijksuniversiteit Groningen. It may be, of course, that you have questions. If I have questions, I suppose my questions would be, how can you sell your heritage to someone else? I think I know how to do it, but you have to really think about it. Why is it going to work for you when it's unlikely to work for anyone else? What have you got that's special? And that needs a real hard look at it if you're going to try it. And can you predict success? Think about it. Those would be my questions. I started with a question. I think it's fair enough as an academic. I should end with a few 3 questions. Don't you, Jacek? Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, thank you very much indeed. It was magic, and I shall also congratulate the interpreters. They did manage to follow. Could you kindly take your earphones? Because now we have time for a short discussion. Jeżeli Państwo macie pytania do naszego gościa, to mamy też mobilny mikrofon i proszę korzystać z tej okazji. Rozumiem, że publiczność nie jest zmęczona, jest zahipnotyzowana. I w takim razie ja pierwsze pytanie pomocnicze zadam. Myśmy się po raz pierwszy poznali dawno, dawno temu, pewnie to było w Dordrechcie, ale już w 1991 roku pan profesor był naszym gościem na konferencji Managing Historic Cities, którą żeśmy zorganizowali dosyć proroczo tutaj w centrum na początku naszej działalności. I pytanie dotyczy Krakowa. Jak by pan profesor zechciał najkrócej skomentować sytuację Krakowa jako miejsca dziedzictwa w roku 90-91, kiedy Kraków był znany w Europie jako polluted and neglected, i Krakowa dzisiaj w roku 2014 jako ważnej destynacji Ryana, EasyJeta i różnych innych tak zwanych low costów. Co jest istotą tej zmiany? Don't hesitate, be cruel, please.
Well, this is totally a personal, completely opinionated, biased observations. I quite liked the old Krakow, the Krakow of 20 years ago. I'm not fond of 29 Ryanair flights coming into Krakow. What on earth are you doing? 29 Ryanair flights. And I see the results of that on the ground. I'm not against Ryanair, I've used it many times, nor indeed people taking the opportunity of cheap flights to places where the alcohol is cheaper than where they live. Good luck to them. But that wasn't an option that Krakow had to take. You could have left that to a number of other choice places in Poland, which I'm sure you could think of. Krakow had other options. However, my pessimism is lightened a little. You can still get an extremely good żurek soup. And I know exactly where, exactly. So that hasn't changed at all, fortunately.
No, pan profesor zwrócił nam uwagę, że dziedzictwo to nie tylko to, co Anglicy określają pojęciem tangible, materialne, ale również niematerialne i rozumiem, że żurek jest pomiędzy. A w takim razie jaki jest scenariusz dla Krakowa, bo rozumiem, że pan profesor zna liczne przykłady, które wyprzedzają Kraków w poziomie komercjalizacji, uniformizacji, McDonaldyzacji, Disneylandyzacji naszego dziedzictwa. My weszliśmy teraz w fazę klubów go-go tutaj w sercu naszego dziedzictwa. Co będzie dalej? What is the next step?
I really would need to know a great deal more about who makes the decisions here in the city of Krakow.
Possibly no one.
Then you've got a problem.
It is a spontaneous process.
I deeply believe that heritage is about selection. The question is who selects, how do you select? I've related many problems, but all of those are susceptible to management, all of them. But in order to manage, you first have to know what the hell is going on. You have to understand. So I'd say step one, understand. Step two, manage according to the goals that you set. That's another problem, set your goals. Whether you have the structures capable of doing this, I really don't know.
To jest dla nas ważna konkluzja, bo po to mamy Akademię Dziedzictwa, żeby przygotowywać kadry. Czy Państwo macie, bardzo proszę poczekać z łaski swojej na mikrofon. Pan Janusz dobiegnie do ostatniego rzędu. Good. Ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you, Gregory, for your interesting lecture. Of course, as
Microphone.
yes, I'm talking in the microphone.
Closer.
Closer. Okay. Thank you for the lecture. Of course, as it was said, you are a monument in the field. I have a question concerning the first part of your presentation. It's not on Krakow, my question. It's more a general thing. Of course, I read many of your books and material. But I was struck in this presentation of the very harsh division between preservation and development. Personally, I'm not really convinced by it. I understand what you mean, I think, but my question is, do you see an opportunity for the preservation activities themselves to become a source of development by the upkeep or maintenance of monuments themselves? Or, as I like to call it, the quality protection of the monuments by, let's say, skilled workforces on regional level, that this becomes a source for development rather than really making a harsh division between both of them?
I am myself somewhat concerned about the enormous schism that exists within people working within heritage. I've been aware of it all my life, I think, but it's got much more serious in the last 10 years or so. I think as governments have taken more and more interest in it, and indeed private enterprise has taken more and more interest in it, those actually doing it have increased in number enormously, and indeed increased in power. Those actually thinking about it, the academics, haven't. It is a small handful, and they've become increasingly disenchanted. They've largely, to some extent, pulled out in the last couple of years from any active discussion with the doers as such. Have you heard of something called the critical heritage movement? Yeah, I mean, that's a symptom of that. They now talk only to each other. They now write in their own journals, all of which are tied up with this idea of critical heritage, which has nothing whatsoever to do with the sort of development things that we're talking about. So there is an enormous gap opening up between those thinking about it and those actually doing it. And that means dialogue is becoming more and more difficult. I have no personal solution to that one, but it does worry me a bit.
Good. Bardzo proszę.
Could you tell us about examples of cities which used gamification method to promote themselves, which is more engaging in creating a city brand for citizens, authorities and tourists?
I have no particular blueprint for success, no. Nor would I pick on a particular case and say, hey, that's the way to do it. If everyone did it in the same way as city X or region Y, there would be no problems anymore. I don't really believe in that approach. I've been in many, many places which have done what I think are good things, which have achieved most of their objectives, or many of their objectives. I'm sure you have as well. I could list places where I think it's worked. You could list places, I'm sure, where you think it's worked. Whether any general lessons can be drawn from that is what would concern me, I think, more than anything else. I think every place is unique. Krakow is unique. Krakow will solve Krakow's problems, and Krakow will develop the Krakow model for using its heritage, and it will be quite unique to Krakow. And anyone else saying, hey, we'll do that as well, it won't work there. So I would stress that, I think. Which is, of course, singly unhelpful to you, I know that. But I'm not in business to be helpful to you. I'm an academic, I'm here to worry you.
Ja myślę, że to była bardzo dobra konkluzja naszego dzisiejszego wieczoru. I think that it was a very good conclusion of this very venue. Jeszcze raz bardzo dziękuję Państwu i bardzo dziękuję Panu Profesorowi. Once again, many thanks for your appearance.